He never filed an appearance on behalf of the United States government. And to this day, I don't know if he was ever authorized to operate on their behalf. And State Farm, which not just State Farm on behalf of the Tuckers, because we all know we buy insurance. Our insurance companies agree to accept their insured's liability up to the limits of their liability coverage. But of course, we do know that representation in these actions is typically unlimited, I believe. But State Farm was never an independent tortfeasor in this action. So my issue with Chandra and Linda Tucker is separate from State Farm. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm not even a friend, not that they're an enemy of the Tuckers. But if I were related to the Tuckers, I'd be wondering why somebody on their behalf hasn't said, hey, State Farm may have operated in bad faith, because in Florida, insurance companies have a duty to represent the interests of their insured above their own interests. That's essentially what bad faith is. And you can go look up bad faith law in Florida. And I'm sure there's a million insurance agents or what do you call them? Yeah, I guess agents who you could just ask about what bad faith would mean when it comes to automobile insurance. There's other State Farm entities and their employees. Austin Road Basketball, which is the firm that represented the Tuckers, and its employees. There was never anything filed saying that they represent those entities. And as we go down on here, the first thing you're going to see is the word. I had to say, I hereby declare that the terms of this settlement and release have been completely read and are fully understood and voluntarily accepted. I don't know how we conflate volunteerism with Mr. Doss go sign that document, which is something that would go back to the argument. And as you can see, I signed it under duress, which would go back to the argument as to whether Judge Peacock overstepped her scope and authority by rewriting essentially the stipulation. And did Judge Peacock ever have jurisdiction over the other parties who were never a part of the litigation and for matters that were not pled? So that's where we are. And then the question comes, who's going to check them? Well, I am. Now, I have filed complaints with the Judicial Qualifications Committee. And Brett, tell them about your situation with what you've done with the, who's it that you said, Brett, that you went through before?
You mean the magistrate?
No, the agency that you called when you had an issue with these people.
Oh, yeah. The Inspector General. So the Inspector General of Florida has several branches, and the one that's applicable for child support is through the Department of Revenue. And so I reached out to that Inspector General. You don't really get to speak to the quote unquote Inspector General. You speak to, I guess, an associate, whatever. They take the call. I explain my situation. And then I guess she relayed that information to the Inspector General. And in my case, literally 4 hours later, I got a call from the local child support here in Manatee County. And essentially they just removed the action that they were taking against me at that time. So, that can be helpful. Obviously, you have to have a legitimate claim or issue. So be careful with that. But that just goes to show you that those people, they can make things right if they want to, but you have to have a case against them and force them to do it. I was going to say too, Greg, just on what you were reading, my situation was based on the case law that you just read. We had a change in the time sharing, and because of the change in the time sharing, they had to recalculate child support.